Hello chaps and chapettes, and I hope you are all well and good for today. We are looking into the history of a few famous doggos of the Second World War today, and I focus upon three in particular, with a fourth and a cat being mentioned as well. These dogs were part of a vital effort for the war. That was the recovery of victims of bombing raids. The mass bombings, or the Blitz as it was known, of civilian targets, mainly over London. Now, this is a little video based upon British dogs, as they are the ones I have an easier time finding bits for, basically. Although, this doesn't mean that they were the only animals of service. If you do have any stories or any information on foreign dogs and things like that, I would love to hear them, and please put them in the comments below. So listen all the way through, see what's actually mentioned, and then if you've got some other ones that you think are well worth mentioning for this effort, so the search and rescue effort, please pop them below. Would love to hear them, and I might look at doing a followed up episode about some of the access hounds. Now, I also just want to mention one other thing quickly. I do know about the horrific loss of animal lives during the war, especially the initiative to cull pets and things like that, but I won't be talking about that in this video. And yes, I just wanted to mention that, just so you know, and you don't need to mention it in the comments. Now, before we get to the service dogs, I want to mention the Blue Cross, a part of the RSPCA who would go out in the mornings after air raids and would work to rescue the animal victims of the Blitz, and often nurse them back to health and get them back to their old selves. There were a few cases of serious survival by these animals, one being the dog who survived 3 days of burial to be rescued by the Pioneer Corps. There was Beauty, a 6-year-old wire-haired fox terrier, who went on to save 63 fellow animals and the odd occasional human in the rubble of the Blitz. She was awarded the Dickens Medal for her heroic actions, and is often stated as the first pioneer rescue dog of the time. It was not just dogs, of course. We have the tale of Faith, of the Church of St. Augustine. The cat guarded and protected her litter of kittens throughout the night and the mass bombing raid that was going on. While inside a burning building, she managed to save all of her kittens. For this heroic deed, Faith was awarded the Silver Medal due to her being ineligible for a Dickens Medal because she was a civilian cat. Anyway, let us get started. The first dog we have today is Rip. He was a mixed breed terrier and found as a stray, so little is known of his life prior, so really we don't know much about Rip until he joined the services of the ARP, Air Raid Precautions Unit. He was found following a heavy bombing raid in late 1940. He was found initially by Warden E. King of Post B123 in Poplar, East London. Initially Rip was found sniffing around the post, hungry and a little afraid, as you would expect for anyone having to survive a bombing raid. Mr. King started throwing a few scraps of his rations to the dog, who he expected to leave after eating. However, this didn't happen. He wouldn't leave him alone after eating, and never returned home. He stayed at the ARP post. Most likely Rip probably didn't have a home to return to. Being that he was friendly and appears to have been trained, Rip was most likely from a house that had been hit by a bomb. The little dog stayed with the ARP and was eventually adopted and made the mascot of the South Hill Street Air Raid Patrol Unit. After his adoption, Rip would often follow his ARP wardens as they would sift through the rubble after a night of heavy bombing, trying to save anyone trapped beneath. After a short time, Rip started to sniff out victims and tried to dig them up all by himself, scratching and pawing at concrete and bricks and other rubble laying across the ground. Rip had no training in the efforts of search and rescue and started his actions on his own accord. He became the service's first official search and rescue dog. After all his hard work in a stint of 12 months, Rip was credited to find over 100 victims of the raids. His success and tireless work has been credited as part of the creation of the role and effort to train search and rescue dogs from 1941 onwards. For his action, Rip was awarded the Dickin Medal in 1945, 2 years after it was introduced. The citation reads, "For locating many air raid victims during the Blitz of 1940. The Dickin Medal was created by the PDSA, People's Dispensary for Sick Animals, a veterinary charity founded by Maria Dickens, CBE. The medal is awarded to animals who serve in the military for acts of gallantry or devotion to their duty. The medal is often referred to as the equivalent as the Victoria Cross for animals. Rip would wear his medal with pride on his collar until the day he finally passed away in October of 1946 and was buried at the PDSA cemetery in Ilford, Essex. Next we look at Jet of Ida. Jet was born the 21st of July 1942 and was a purebred black German Shepherd, born in Ida Kennels of Moseley Hill, Liverpool. At the age of 9 months, he was loaned to the War Dog School in Gloucestershire, initially getting trained as an anti-sabotage dog for the RAF, performing work such as sniffing out any bombs and keeping the runways generally safe and sound from anyone trying to cause trouble and mischief on the ground. After serving for 18 months, he was returned to the school for a new role in the military, receiving training as a search and rescue dog, showing you can indeed teach an old dog new tricks. He was paired with a new handler, Corporal Wardell, and was now part of the Civil Defence Service, and this meant working in the dangerous area of London and working to sniff out survivors. Jet and his human were the first official pair to be integrated into the service. It was said that Jet was well known to call out in a howl when he could hear the planes coming, and then would settle as they started leaving, working as an early radar system. Jet worked hard and in the end was responsible for the rescue of over 50 people, along with finding the corpses of many who had lost their lives in the bombing raids, but luckily were found and able to be given a good burial. After the war, he was returned to Liverpool and received the Dickin Medal on the 12th of January 1945. However, our story doesn't end here for Jet. Despite being happy with retirement and all the perks that came with this, Jet's job was not over just as of yet. In August of 1947, an explosion rocked the William Pitt mine. 117 men were underground at the time of the explosion. It was thought that only 10 had survived. However, a ray of hope opened up when 3 more survivors were found later in the next couple of days. However, many had perished in the shaft. 90 bodies were found, but the remaining 14 were feared lost. After a few days, a novel idea was had to bring the search and rescue dogs to try and help locate missing corpses of the miners. The RAF School for Police Dogs received a call, but only could spare 2 dogs. Many other dogs that were trained in the search and rescue situations were not available at the time and in different locations. Luckily, a war hero was close by, and a former member of the school indeed, as well. And that was Jet. He was collected from his home, and on the trip up to the pit, Rix, Prince and Jet worked hard and helped find all but 2 bodies. After his efforts in the disaster, Jet would go on to receive yet another medal, that of the RSPCA's Medal of Valour. Jet returned home after a Bone and Medals ceremony and spent his remaining years at his house with his human, Lilias Ward. He passed away in October of 1949. He was buried in the English flower garden of Calderstone Park, where now a memorial sits celebrating our 4-legged hero Jet. Finally, we look at one of the most successful search and rescue dogs of the time, along with a little look at her human, Margaret Griffin. The Crumstone Kennels had become a rather well-known kennel by the war's end for their search and rescue dogs, and most famous was Crumstone Irma, with her partner Crumstone Psyche. The dogs had initially been trained as messenger dogs for the ARP in the event of telephone lines going down. Irma was an extraordinary doggo, and gained some fame for her speeds and her smarts. Her first location of service was with the ARP Surrey Reporting Centre, She was working at an ARP post 3.5 miles away from the centre and managed to deliver messages in under 14 minutes. Yes, 3.5 miles in under 14 minutes. That would have gained her a gold medal in the Olympics at the time. After her time as a messenger, along with Psyche, they were brought home to Margaret Griffin, where they would be retrained for a new role, that of search and rescue dogs for the ARP. After a few months of learning new skills, the three set out to London town and started their work. And they were very good at their jobs as well. Working as a pair of dogs, they would find over 233 people, around 20 of which were still alive. Irma had a particular skill, and that was her bark. Irma would bark in different pitches for different bodies found. If they were no longer in this mortal coil, she would bark differently to that of one that was still alive, and this proved to be a vital skill on one occasion. Irma signalled that a victim was alive under a pile of rubble. However, when the rescue team had finally dug up the man, he appeared dead, so much so that the rescue team put him to the side and paid no attention to the man, assuming he had perished. Unusually, Irma kept by his side and barked. It said she even licked his face until finally the man stirred, waking up to the sight of the blue sky and a very happy dog by his side. This was not Irma's only famous exploit, however. One morning, hard at work, our heroic pupper came across a pile of rubble that no one could have survived. Rescue workers had left it because there was only going to be corpses in this house. No one could have survived this. However, Irma had sniffed differently. Nose in the air, tail swiggling around. The dog moved to the rubble and all of a sudden started to bark, and it was the "I have a living one here" bark. The prior night, the Raven family had gotten under their table, using it as a makeshift bomb shelter, as many other families did who could not afford things like an Anderson or Morris shelter at the time. The family huddled under their kitchen table as the bombs started to fall all around them, and the worst case happened. A bomb landed near their home, obliterating the building, turning it into nothing but ash and rubble. That morning, with Irma shouting in her way, "There were live ones here," the rescue team started to dig. It took them 20 minutes of removing rubble to finally come across the occupants of the house. Sadly, one had not survived, that being the mother, but her two younger boys had survived the night, and with the aid of Irma were saved from the horrific tomb they were trapped in. In 1950, the two boys would meet up with their saviour at the Cruft Dog Show. Irma was said to be very happy to see them. Irma became one of the most famous rescue dogs of the war for her exploits, along with her co-worker Psyche, and of course their handler, trainee and well-deserved BEM member, British Empire Medal recipient Margaret Griffin. Irma was awarded the Dickens Medal for all of her work for finding over 200 people in the Blitz. She also took part in the London Victory Parade celebrations alongside fellow hero dog Jet.
The grand work of the police during the war years is acknowledged, together with the heroes of civil defense, including this dog, VC.
And well, that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this look at some of our bravest good boys and girls of the Blitz. And as I said, if you have a rescue dog story, please leave it in the comments below. Sadly, I can't cover every one of them, but if there are some that are really interesting, I will get onto it. And I'll be going over some more heroic animals of the war soon as well. You may have noticed a little bit of a connection between the last couple of videos. So if you have any tales from brave animals of the Axis nations, or Russia, of course, allied nations that aren't English speakers predominantly, it would be very useful if you could find me English text for them, because I would love to have a look at that too and do some more in the future. Okay, thank you so much for watching all. This is me, Carl Screezilla, wishing you all a good day. Bye bye.